All right, so you're moving to South Florida and you're looking for a great place to live. You found a bunch of great options, and Wellington is one of the ones that you're looking at, but you don't know everything you need to know. You've heard some whispers, some friends have told you some things. Maybe you know somebody that lives there, but you really need to know the good, the bad, the fantastic, and the ugly. Well, stick around because that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Hi, my name is Andy Johnson with the Andy Johnson Group over at eXp Realty. And if this is your first time joining us on the channel, go ahead, push that subscribe button, ring that bell so that you can be notified anytime we post new information about Jupiter, Florida, and the surrounding area. Listen, every day we have people just like you that want to make South Florida their home. So whether you're thinking about moving today, tomorrow, next week, or next year, we would love to hear from you. All right, but let's get back to it. Why are we here today? Well, that's because we want to learn all about Wellington, so we better jump right into it. What is Wellington? Where is Wellington? Well, Wellington started being developed back mainly in the 1970s. There were already people out there, but the population then was actually only about 300 people, and it has ballooned to over 65,000 in the village of Wellington. So Wellington is located directly west of West Palm Beach. The easiest way to get there is to take Southern straight out, either from the Turnpike or 95, and you will descend upon the village of Wellington. You can get out there easily by going down Okeechobee or Lake Worth too. So Wellington is surrounded basically by kind of the acreage to the north, which if you're not familiar with what that is, that's a bunch of homes and just an area in general that has 1 acre properties that all the homes are a little bit different. There's some other stuff going on out there too, but that's in general. Pushing out kind of west into Wellington also, you have a lot of the equestrian properties out there, and past those, you're gonna run into the eastern part of the Everglades. So Wellington is out to the west. It's kind of the farthest west that you're gonna go, right along that southern corridor before you run into some big kind of farmland and getting into completely different areas. So Wellington's area honestly is one of the great and not so great things about it. The great thing about it is you're definitely tucked away. It's got a little bit more of a tight-knit community feel. I know it's 65,000 people, but compared to when you get to some other places, the village of Wellington really kind of feels self-contained, and some people really like that. Now, the drawback to this location is how long it gets to head north or take to go north and south, right? So like I said, the easiest way to get in and out of there a lot of the times is to go east and west on Southern, which is going to take you to the Turnpike or 95. The Turnpike, depending on where you live, is easily going to take you 10 to 15 minutes to get to, and 95 can take you anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. And this is standard traffic. This isn't rush hour traffic. So getting in and out of Wellington to head north and south can be a little bit cumbersome and is not one of the most awesome things about living out there. But once you're there, honestly, even when the snowbirds roll in, or really all the equestrian people kind of descend upon the community, traffic in Wellington, although it's much heavier than it's going to be midsummer, is not nearly as bad as you're going to find a lot of other places during the season down here. So Wellington really is a great place to call home, and one of the biggest things about Wellington, I kind of already mentioned, is it is the winter equestrian capital of the world. The International Polo Club is in Wellington, and it is probably one of the most elite equestrian places that you can go to, definitely in Florida and probably anywhere in the winter. So, big plus for Wellington is if equestrian is what you are after, there's really no place else that you can consider. Another great thing about Wellington is the housing that's available out there. Whether you're looking for a condo, a townhouse, maybe a villa, or even a massive custom-built mansion with acres of land, you can find it there. Tons and tons of options. You do have a lot of homes in Wellington that are not located in an association which in South Florida, we have associations all over the place, depending on where you're moving from in the country. That may or may not be the same for you. Where I'm from, we didn't have that as much. And a lot of people that come here are looking for the same things. They don't want to fall into the rules and regulations that you get with an association. Wellington can be a great place to come for that. Now, there's plenty of gated communities too. So if you're looking for something that has that extra level of security, that where your lawn's going to be mowed for you, and you've got the gate guard and all of the amenities, you're going to find that also. One negative I will say to Wellington about housing, well, for certain people looking for a condo, is what the availability of condos are there. You definitely have a selection, but there really are not any high-rise condos. And then the view that you're going to get when a lot of people think Florida and condo are not really what you're going to find. Again, with Wellington being way off to the west, you're not going to have views of the intracoastal. You're not going to have views of the ocean. You're going to have some views of pond, but you're just not going to have those sprawling, condo high-rise views that a lot of people associate with condos. All right, so what's another thing that makes Wellington great? Well, another thing that makes Wellington great is how well manicured this community is as a whole. To tell you the truth, it's the place that my family lived first when we moved out here. And the reason that we did was because, honestly, we didn't know about videos like this, and we just were driving around to see what we liked. And when we drove through Wellington, it just presented itself so nicely that it's this where we decided to call home for our first year in the area. And it's still that way. It's just a beautiful area to drive around. They have a beautiful community center. It's got a cool water park there. I mean, it's not the biggest thing you've ever been to, but it's an awesome place to take the kids and hang out at. They have a great farmers market out in Wellington as well, and a lot of activities, and very, very family friendly also. It is a really family friendly community, which will give us to another positive point about Wellington, and that is the schools. The public schools rate really well. Of course, always do your own due diligence on schools and what's important to you, and we can definitely guide you to those sites and those different places where you need to look if you have any questions about that. One negative to Wellington for people, or a certain population of people that may be looking out there though, is the availability of 55 and older communities. There are a couple, but the options are really, really limited compared to a lot of other places in South Florida. So, if you're specifically coming down or looking in the area and a 55 and older community is something that you'd like, Wellington may not be on the top of your list. And 55 and older communities can be a great, great option. You get a lot of value in there and a lot of amenities depending on what you're looking for. So it's something definitely to consider if you're in that age bracket and that's a type of community that is on your radar and something you're considering. All right, so some more good and bad about Wellington. Here we go. Restaurants. If you've seen any of our other videos or ever met me in person, you'll know that I like to eat, and I like to eat in Wellington. You've got a really, really great selection of restaurants, some really great places to go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they're kind of all thrown all over the place. Now, going along with that, though, is nightlife in Wellington is leaving something to be desired. It's not that there's nowhere to go, nowhere to hang out, but I don't know if Wellington has one dance club. I'm not the best person to ask. I don't really dance and I don't really go to clubs anymore. But that is something that's definitely lacking. Now, that being said, you are very, very close to downtown West Palm, where you have clematis and a lot of nightlife and things to do. So, while you don't have it in your backyard, it really is only a quick 25-minute drive away from you, and you can get over there. Bringing me right to another kind of negative about the area of Wellington, and that's the beach. So I understand that a lot of people that are going to live in Wellington aren't necessarily moving to Florida for the beach, and that's fine, that's great, but some people still like to go. And I'll tell you, for me personally, the closest beach that you're going to be able to get to is going to be the beach on Palm Beach Island, which is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful. Palm Beach Island is a great place to go to, drive around to. I mean, next to nothing shopping. I mean, it's crazy out there. Super elite, very, very nice. But The beach and going to the beach has just never been something I've been a big fan of out there. Parking tends to be more expensive than other areas, and especially once you get into season, it's really, really busy. It can be really hard to find a parking space. So, for me, honestly, I used to go all the way down to Boynton Beach. That was my favorite at the time, and that was easily a 45-minute drive. There are closer beaches, like you can go down to Lake Worth, and I like Lake Worth a lot. It's just their beach is really narrow, so if you don't time it right, it gets really, really crowded, and it's really hard to find a spot. So again, hear me out. For me, I like a little bit more space between me and my neighbors at the beach. If you like to sit next to them and get to know them, you might want to go to Lake Worth, or maybe Palm Beach is for you. But that's just me. For me, a negative is the beaches that are closest to you, and it's definitely a little bit of a drive to get to a great one. Okay, so another good and bad thing about Wellington is the water that you've got out there. You have a really, really big lake out in Wellington that actually a lot of houses back up to. People have boats on them, pontoons that kind of cruise around, and it's something super cool. You actually have a lot of canals out there as well, which have some massive bass in there. I am from the Midwest originally, and I caught a 9-pound bass. That's a fishing story. It was 8, but it was 8. I will show anyone the picture. It was a huge bass out of the canal, but it's good and bad. One thing that I found atrocious out there, and I've mentioned for other areas, but was almost worse in Wellington, was the mosquitoes. Just because you are farther out to the west, and you have more standing water, probably more places for mosquitoes to kind of breed and grow. They can get kind of unbearable out there during mosquito season. It's nothing you can't get away from, but if it's something where you're going to want to spend a lot of time outside at your house, a screened enclosure might be something that you definitely want to consider, and then also a Costco membership so you can buy a lot of bug spray too. So that's it. Another bad thing about the location in Wellington is, from a hurricane standpoint, you're pretty much never going to be issued an evacuate order all the way out in Wellington. Now, if you've watched any of our videos and we go a little bit more in depth about hurricanes, any time a storm comes, you should have a plan for you and your family about what makes sense. But a lot of areas are not going to get evacuation zones, and Wellington is definitely one of them because you're so far out west. Doesn't mean that there's not any danger out there. It just means, the flooding shouldn't be a problem. And if Wellington is getting an evacuation order, we have a pretty big problem for the entire coast. So that's a good thing. But that being said too, because you are farther away from the water, you're farther away from the wind that we get off the ocean. The farther that you go inland, the farther that dies down. And it's not that you always feel it, anyway. I live a little bit farther west, not as far west as Wellington, but I still get a little bit of that. So when we get into the summer months and it's hot, it does get hot here, then the humidity, I think, can feel a little bit worse out there because you just have nothing to knock it down. So the humidity compared to other areas that are a little bit farther east in Florida during summer can make Wellington a big negative. But as we know, a big plus to South Florida as a whole, and why we're all down here, is the beautiful weather that we have. It's hot everywhere, well, most places during the summer, but our winters are so beautiful, and Wellington is no exclusion from that. Once we run into those nice, winter months where it's 70 every day, and you've got your windows open and your slider doors open, and you're wearing shorts in January and February, you remember while you're here. All right, one more thing I need to mention about Wellington too that I just think is spectacular, and I can't remember if I did, but I need to highlight it. It is the parks that they have available to the residents out there. There are a lot of them, and they're really, really great. So if you're into going to parks and hanging out there with yourself, with a book, or you like to take the kids or friends or family or whatever, Wellington is a great place for that. All right, so here we go. One of the last benefits to Wellington, and I think is a pretty good one and a good one for a lot of people coming down here, and that is the value that you can find out there. By no means is Wellington an inexpensive place to live. Unfortunately, South Florida in general has become a more pricey place to be. But when you compare Wellington, which has great schools, great homes, great location, nothing but great things going for it. And compare the prices there to some other areas like Palm Beach Gardens, Boca, certain areas in Delray where you're just going to pay more for location. You can actually get a little bit more bang for your buck in Wellington. So, if a nicer home is something that makes you willing to go a little bit farther out west, it's definitely something you should consider. So there we go, right? There's some of the really good and the really bad as far as Wellington is concerned. You've got the equestrian population. For anyone that is into that, you've got great housing options. You've got great restaurants. To me, like I said, other than getting in and out of Wellington once you're there, traffic, no matter what time of the year it is better than a lot of other places in the area. You have fantastic weather in Wellington once we get to those fantastic winter months or our season months here. But then you've got the bad stuff too. I mean, you really do. It is going to be more humid out there in the summers. The mosquitoes are kind of a bear out there. If you're looking for nightlife, Wellington really probably is not the place for you. And that's it. I mean, there's more to it, and I would love to share it with you. And really, that's what me and my team are here to do. As I mentioned before, every day we have people that are reaching out to us that want to come down to South Florida. And there's so many options when you're coming down here, whether you're looking in Jupiter, Juneau, Tequesta, you want something farther out west like Wellington, maybe the acreage is something that would be interesting to you, where you have an acre of land surrounding you, or 5 acres of land surrounding you and your neighbors, so you have a little bit more privacy. Delray, where you've got Atlantic Ave, or you want to be down in Boca, where you've got some fantastic shopping. Maybe you want to know more about Miami or Fort Lauderdale. One of the hardest parts about coming down here, and where we really try and guide people, is helping them identify the locations where they might best be suited when they're down here, and then finding them the dream home that they're looking for, because we know we can find you the home that you're looking for. We know all about the communities and the amenities, but first we want to identify where are you going to be the happiest, where day to day are you really going to enjoy spending your life. So, we would love to talk to you, guide you a little bit more about what your options are down here. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, please reach out, and can't wait to see you on the next one.